My name is Emily Snow, and this is my presentation on war and the human experience. I just want to start out by talking about my personal life, I guess, and my experience to preface my perspective beforehand and coming into this class. So I'm 18. I'm a college freshman here at CCDH, and I'm an athlete. I'm playing for the women's soccer team here. It's been great so far. I'm a middle child out of five kids. I have two older brothers, a younger brother, and a younger sister. And through having siblings, I'll talk about this a little more in a second, but through having siblings, I've learned a lot of valuable life lessons that have shaped how I've grown up, and with sports as well. There's a lot of things that I've learned from those challenges and everything, and I'll expand a little bit on that in a second. I have two loving parents, my mom and my dad. They're amazing. I love them, and I'm so grateful for how I grew up and the childhood I had. One thing with my family dynamic, I think that was a point of struggle for me growing up, and that is kind of a part of my, I guess, internal war that I've lived, is being, because I'm the middle child, but I'm also the eldest daughter, and with that, in my family, it felt like I had a sort of responsibility. And I think this can sometimes be, especially through uh, patriarchy and just dynamics of and being a girl, growing up, it kind of felt hard sometimes. I felt like I always had to be, I think I had a deep sense of perfectionism. I felt like I had to be the best. I had to be, I guess, maybe not the best, but I had to be, I'd do everything perfect, I'd do everything right, or else I was going to let everyone down. And even though my parents didn't, they weren't really instilling that on me, it was just kind of all around me. And I think that um, took seat in me very young. And so it was kind of hard growing up. I always felt like I had a responsibility. I was kind of a peacemaker between my siblings. I felt like I needed to make my parents proud. I had to be not the best child, I had to be the perfect child. And um, it's taken a lot of time for me to be able to even realize that's how I felt and realize that was a struggle and then to get through it. And it led to a lot of burnout and stress, especially beginning of high school. And I've been able to be working through it. But um, related to that, with my values, there's in chapter 2 of Living Inspirations, it talks about how in order to start your inner work and a foundational starting point with your inner work has to be becoming aware of and examining your and ranking your values. So some of my most important values are the value of kindness, helping others, empathy, um, teamwork, and communication, and respect is a huge one. We all need to have respect for each other. It's one of my most important values. Um, So those are just a few of ones that are really important to me. And then another big part of my worldview and growing up is religion. So um, that has been an integral part of my life, and I'm very grateful that I grew up with religion. And I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormon as most people know it. Um, but growing up with that, I have always had a sense of belonging, within church, and then I think my family, my parents, were able to instill those feelings of peace and stability, and empathy from a very young age. I think growing up in religion, and I know a lot of people don't have great experiences with religion. I'm very grateful that I have, and that growing up, it wasn't toxic, it wasn't ever forced, but it was it and still is a very big part of my life. Um, and to kind of more get into topics of war and the human experience instead of just talking about me, um, I think I kind of see war, or not war, conflict, I guess, as something that can be resolved and doesn't have to be escalated. And I want to give some background because I think within my family and even with my friends and on my sports teams, I felt like being a peacekeeper was something that I was fairly good at, that I could handle. I could see the situation from both perspectives and try to come to some sort of solution or compromise, whatever it was, whether it was with my siblings, something small, or argument with my friends, or whatever it was. Um, and I was able to do this even though I've growing up, I still am pretty introverted. I tend to, I think, quietly observe my environment and surroundings. I'm more of like a reflective person, and I think to a lot of people that just like, oh yeah, I'm just like in the background, or like, oh yeah, I'm just like the nice girl or whatever it may be, and because I've been told that before. But I think that kind of works to my advantage at times because I can observe and see my environment and then know, like, and I can pick up on people's like perceptions and their like emotions and kind of adjust accordingly and know like what they need at that point and like how I can help or what I can do to solve a problem. And I think that's a really something that I saw a lot in the reading and throughout this course is about like with conflict resolution is um, seeing the from both perspectives or however multiple perspectives there are and being able to work efficiently with people and work effectively with people without causing resentment or misunderstanding, and through that is just a big important thing is communication with that and just seeing the other person's perspective. And growing up in a large family taught me that conflict is unavoidable pretty much. You're going to having different people from different perspectives, you're going to run into that conflict and that like disagreements, and because we're all different and we have different experiences and different thoughts, and we all perceive the world a little bit differently. um, so conflict is not unavoidable, but it doesn't have to become destructive. And I think my religious beliefs really reinforce values like forgiveness, patience, respect, which really shape how I view both personal conflict and larger societal conflict. And really, I think that if everyone followed Christ's teachings from the scriptures, really conflict would be much less, or through conflict it wouldn't escalate to war as much as it does now. And that's my opinion. No one has to agree, but I really do think that if everyone followed God's teachings and really like committed to that and was just understanding and kind and empathetic of each other, everything would be so much easier. But it's much easier said than done, of course. Um, and my kind of, I guess, like personal definition of war, it's kind of complicated, but I think war at its base is it's any sustained conflict where harm, control, or domination replaces understanding and respect, whether that's between nations, communities, or within individuals themselves. These can be global wars or our internal interpersonal wars, and it's often where we see people only acknowledging how war shows up between nations or on a global scale, but we can't forget the personal wars that everyone goes through and the wars that we go through with each other. And for me, I think parts of my internal war come from my identity, or rather, struggle with identity. Um, I've dealt with anxiety a lot and just a lot of stress, and imposter syndrome is kind of something that I've struggled with. Just feeling like I don't deserve what I have. Like I've gotten here, but oh, it was luck. Or like even though I've worked hard, sometimes it's hard to accept that I've gotten where I am, or I feel like I'm adjusting because sometimes it comes with being observant, being introverted. I feel like I have to adjust what I'm doing based on other people around me. And that's not how it should be. And I know that, and I'm trying to work on that. But I think we often don't see, like, if I didn't tell somebody that, I don't think that be able to tell that about me. But it really shows our internal wars are not seen most of the time. Maybe those close to us know about them that we can go to for advice, but we really have to be careful about assuming things about people because you never know what their internal war may be, whether it's their struggle with self confidence or struggle with whatever they have at home that you don't know about, or whatever it is, or struggle with health issues or injuries. I myself have many injuries through sports, and that I think really made me struggle with my identity as an athlete. If I'm not able to play my sport, what am I what am I doing? What am I doing here? And yeah, I just wanted to expand on that to kind of emphasize, I think, something that I've learned throughout this course, especially with the Living Inspirations reading. I've been able to see how much it's impactful when we really take other people's experiences into account and don't just think about our own, and to just know that we all have different perspectives on things. We all have different experiences, and it's going to influence our worldview and how we see things. And I've talked about already my sibling conflict, learning through that, but I think it was really good for me to um, learn problem solving, learn how to compromise, learn how to work with other people, and I think it was good for me, and I think it's good for everyone to have siblings or some sort of close family or friends that they can grow up with, so that they learn those skills and values. Um, and one thing really that I learned from this, which I also read in chapter 8 of Living Inspirations, was that you can discover your own trained capacities by observing how you react to others, which I think is really important because something I learned very young, especially being in between a lot of boys as a kid, is that sometimes you just can't react. If you react, then it's going to feed their energy or anger or whatever it is, or feed their reasons if they're attacking you verbally, whatever. Like reacting to that is going to make them jump on it more most of the time. And I think we really have to be, it's really emphasized in the book, in chapter 8 especially, that we have to be aware of our reactions to things, because if we're reacting to like what they're doing, if they're starting conflict and we're reacting to that with more aggressiveness, then it's only going to escalate the situation. We need to learn how to stay calm and be patient and just listen, and then go from there. And I learned that also with toxic coaches. Unfortunately, that's probably some of the worst experience I've had with bad coaches, just getting on you, down on you for everything, and it really hurt my self-confidence, especially as a young soccer player. I just had this really toxic coach that would just berate us on everything, and he used fear and to control us, the fear of punishment, and the pressure, putting everything on us. And then he was never at fault. He never took accountability. That's another thing that's really important in conflict and conflict resolution, is that especially leaders, if they make mistakes, have to admit it. Because if they don't, then anyone you're trying to control or that you're trying to reason with is not going to trust you. They know that you're not taking accountability for these things. And that's a big problem that we have, especially in government, is leaders just doing whatever they want and not taking accountability for it, and instead blaming us. That's something I've learned through toxic coaches that I think helped my understanding in this course. And then with that comes power imbalances. So like authority figures abusing power. That was another something in chapter 2 of Living Inspirations. A quote that says, "The common exploitation of human vulnerability by marketers, men, and others who enjoy fooling and hurting people, or view it as a necessary evil for the sake of profit, destroys relationships and trust. Most of us can be fooled and abused once, but not repeatedly." And I think that's such a powerful quote, and really stood out to me because when we're exploited like that, especially by people in power, a lot of times men, especially here in the United States with our government, it really feels awful, and it's a way that hurts trust, and then we're not, you lose the trust of people that you're trying to hopefully help. But yeah, leading with fear and exploiting people is not the best way to lead, and it's not the best. It doesn't resolve conflict at all, and it just escalates things. But in order to resolve this, we have to look for common ground. This was in chapter 8, Living Inspirations. That common ground, shared interest, and need is kind of a magical bridge across difference. We're all different, but if we can find those little things in common we have with each other, then it's really going to go a long way in finding those solutions and, really making progress and growth with each other. And one important thing that I want to point out is that conflict can become war really when it turns, because I don't think conflict in itself is bad. It's going to happen, like I said, with my siblings, but it doesn't have to turn so harmful or into war. But it does become war when it turns harmful, repetitive, dehumanizing, especially dehumanizing, which you see a lot. I'll talk about in a little bit about with the media and like video games and stuff like that. But conflict can escalate into war when it's not handled correctly, which is why it's so important to have these discussions. And this is something that I've learned throughout this course. Some of the GE courses that I've taken, I took a lot of AP courses in high school, so a lot of those I'm not going to have to take now in college, but ones that I have taken so far have been, there were two, I think, kind of fall in the same category of like ethnic studies. I took an intro to Asian American Studies, APP 101, that taught me a lot more about Asian societies and that part of the world that I didn't learn in high school, that I didn't know before. I took that one last semester, and that one really, I think, expanded my worldview and helped me see how war affects everybody. And obviously we've seen through world wars how that works, but there's conflict everywhere, even in those nations. I didn't really know much about their history, but after learning more about it and seeing how like a lot of those similar issues happen, and they can be solved with similar peace building skills and conflict negotiation skills. Another course that I'm taking right now is an ethnic studies course, CHS 212, and that one has really brought in my idea of like imperialism and how it affects resistance, and people are going to resist when they're feeling oppressed. There's going to be a group that resists, whoever it may be, and it's important to go about it the right way, because we've seen in history how authoritative leaders really, it's just so frustrating. I'm just trying to organize it all in my head because there's just so much that we've learned through history that we don't want to repeat, and a lot of it can just be solved through seeing our differences and finding that common ground and just coming together. And I learned that a lot through that class, which has integrated into this one. And then another GE that I took was THU 120, Introduction to Speech course. I knew that. So that course really helped me learn a lot more skills for speaking and public speaking, and it helped me really learn better how to manage my stress, which I've also learned about in this course, with like self-reflection and taking time to like work on myself and to focus on myself, and like self-care is really important. If we put too much on our plate and do too much, then we're going to be burnt out, we're going to not perform as well, and that doesn't benefit anybody. Other GEs I've taken were a psychology class, Sci 110, which was critical thinking and problem solving, which was a really interesting class. I really loved it. I liked learning about psychology because just seeing how the brain works, it really opened my eyes to how like everyone perceives things differently. It all comes back to the similar ideas, but it really, that course focused on improving critical thinking and problem solving skills and decision making, which is really important for, there's a lot of aspects of decision making that are important to like peace building, because we have to be calm and collected and not do things irrationally. And then the last one, it was introduction to film class. So I kind of wanted to segue with that into how culture and patriarchy glorifies war. So especially in the media, through films can be a great, and that class was COM 130. It was really, really cool class because we analyzed how it kind of represents culture and like where that society was at the time, like when the movies were made, like what was entertaining, what were they expressing through that film. There's so many things that can be said through film and storytelling. And on the negative side of that is how war is really glorified by like patriarchy and through, especially in our society, especially in the US, through like movies and media and like video games. And movies especially, they rarely show trauma, long-term consequences of or PTSD. There are some movies that like are on those themes, but it's really rare that we see that in media, because there's so many movies that it's just killing and gore and it's just so much violence or negativity, and it's really degrading and dehumanizing, and especially through video games, which rewards killing and domination, and you're trying to, it's really competitive, but it's just violent, and especially how they're marketed towards children. Children are so, they're so you can influence children so easily, and it like introducing these things so young to kids. They're marketed towards young kids, and it desensitizes them to violence, and it dehumanizes killing and that violence that we see so much. And they're the most impressionable and vulnerable population, and they're what's being targeted, unfortunately. And there's a lot of masculinity norms or patriarchy that you can see, especially within the US, that you're supposed to be strong, don't show emotion. This was talked about in chapter 4 of Living Inspirations, though that anger is an emotion that needs to be welcomed and normalized. But when it turns into unadulterated rage and losing control, that's when it's a problem, because we are going to have emotions, but we can't deny that. But it's important that we realize that anger is an emotion that we're going to have, but we need to learn how to control that and not push it down. If you push it down, that's when it's going to explode. And that's the problem with a lot of the patriarchal themes and things that we're taught, especially here in the US, is that especially men, like that they're supposed to, never, you don't cry, you're strong, you're, like control yourself, but pushing everything down like that is only going to make matters worse. This kind of goes into American values, competition over cooperation, which is really counterintuitive. Cooperating with each other and working with each other is what's going to bring success. But a lot of times in America, we're seen as everything's competition. You're trying to raise the ladder, beat those below you. And this creates power imbalances, and selfish people in government only look out for their own interests and create difficulties for everyone else. And receive winning as success. There's no other version of success, which is really just short-minded. And another thing I wanted to talk about was found in section 4 of Negotiation Alchemy. It's talking about parts of the world that when they included the concepts and practices of like conflict resolution and restorative justice, it really worked out for the benefit, and has creative possibilities and so many more options than just fighting or war. And it was able to reduce tensions within their country so much. And they really empower more inclusive peace building, which really shows that in practice it works, and it's really important for us to recognize that. And I think one of the most important things to remember is that just building these relationships and using conflict almost as a connection between each other is important, because it's that common ground that we can find to find solutions and just do better and find that like win-win situation, because it's really the goal. Even though like some compromise is good and sometimes that's the solution, but it's important that we can just focus on trying to get that win-win, to do what's best for everybody and for both nations or both people, whoever it is, or within yourself. Trying to find that balance is really important. And I just want to end by saying that I'd like to reimagine a world where we have communication over control, that there's equality, challenge the patriarchy, and that we're able to teach our children emotional intelligence, teach them conflict resolution early in their lives, and just be like the little children. Especially in chapter 6 of Living Inspirations, it says, curiosity is one of the great traits that marks human beings and humanity. And this is really important to me because like in the scriptures it says, be like the little children and come to me. What God is saying, to come to him. Because if we're curious like little kids and we believe and have hope like kids do, we'll really be all better for it. And then last, I just wanted to say less glorification of violence, and more focus on mental health and dialogue within that, because we don't talk about it enough. And it's becoming more prevalent, which I think is great. But that's really like having that self-reflection and working on yourself is important, because if we're not at our best, we're not going to be able to be at our best for others. And that's one big lesson that I've learned in this class as well. And there's just an emphasis that we're each individuals living with each other, and we must find ways to rise above our differences and just coexist. And I'd like to reimagine a world where strength is defined by understanding rather than dominance, where conflict is approached as an opportunity for growth rather than something to win. Thank you.